The entertainment industry has come a long way in the last 100 years. New forms of entertainment are constantly being created while others die out. Among those is the almost extinct Great American Carnival. Carnivals became somewhat of a phenomenon during America's Industrial Revolution. They were full of interesting things you've never seen in your life. For a small fee, you could feast your eyes on wild animals, strange-looking individuals with their bodies completely covered in tattoos, and daring performers who walked a high line or juggled with fire. You could also gawk at people with rare and sometimes debilitating conditions. These were commonly referred to as freaks, hence the name freak show. Many of these so-called freaks saw the carnival as a way to make a living in a society that didn't readily accept those who were considered different. In fact, working at the carnival was often the only way people with disabilities could make a living at this time. While viewed through a different context today, it is certainly true that many of them were able to build successful careers and lives as a result. Grady Stiles was one such individual. He had a condition known as Ectrodactyly, which causes fusions or a cleft in the fingers, making them look more like pincers. This condition had been in his family for generations, but Grady had managed to make it a lucrative business by touring with the carnivals and charging curious spectators who wanted to stare at him and his family's claw-like hands, calling themselves the Lobster Family. When Grady Stiles Jr. was born in 1937, his father also made him part of the show, dubbing him the Lobster Boy. Grady was especially interesting to onlookers because his feet were also affected by his condition. This malformation meant he was unable to walk and required a wheelchair. Despite this, Grady seemed to enjoy the work and played with the other children in the carnival community, where he developed extraordinary upper body strength. He learned to read, write his name, and use firearms, a skill he would later put to disturbing use. Grady made quite a name for himself and was one of the stars of the carnival scene. During the carnival season, he would tour with his family and spend the off-season in Gibsonton, Florida, a sideshow wintering town, along with many other carnival performers. As a young man, Grady met and fell in love with another carnival worker, a young woman named Mary Teresa Herzog, who had run away from home and joined the circus. Mary Teresa worked doing odd jobs in the carnival, which is how she got to know Grady. The two hit it off, and after 9 years together, they decided to get married. This was the start of a bizarre series of events that ultimately ended with Grady receiving 3 bullets in the back of his head. The marriage was good at first, but Grady's charm soon disappeared and a different side of him began to emerge. He started drinking heavily and was prone to anger, which often ended in physical violence. The couple soon had 2 children, Donna, who did not have ectrodactyly, and another daughter named Kathy, who did. Having children didn't improve Grady's temper, and he regularly took it out on Mary Teresa and the children, especially Donna. Even though he needed a wheelchair, it was said that Grady could quickly throw himself from it and use his incredible upper body strength to maneuver himself across the floor, where he would knock her down and even headbutt Mary Teresa, and use his claw-like hands to choke and beat her. The children also received a share of the beatings. Things only got worse when 15-year-old Donna fell in love with an 18-year-old boy Grady didn't approve of. Donna told her father she was pregnant, which was not true, hoping this would convince him to give his consent to marry. After much vitriol, Grady appeared to have a change of heart, and plans for a wedding went ahead. But on the eve of their wedding, Donna's fiancé, Jack Lane, went to the Stiles residence where Grady shot him twice with a shotgun, once in the chest and once in the back. Donna would later testify that as her fiancé lay dying in her arms, her father smiled at her and said, "I told you I would kill him." A media frenzy ensued at the trial, where it seemed like an open and shut case since Grady admitted to killing the young man and showed no remorse. Grady's chances didn't look too good, but he was a seasoned showman and he knew how to put on a good show. He painted a picture of a concerned father trying to protect his family, and that as a society outcast who had suffered cruelly for being disabled, his family was all he had. He even got fellow carnies to testify to his good character. Grady exploited his own disability and wore it like a blanket that seemed to fool people into thinking he was weak and incapable of doing much, let alone cause harm. Despite his fine performance, he was convicted of third-degree murder. However, Grady argued that he couldn't possibly go to prison since it could not accommodate his disability. What's more, Grady now also suffered from cirrhosis of the liver and emphysema from years of heavy drinking and smoking, which meant he required special care. Shockingly, the judge agreed and Grady was given a 15-year suspended sentence. He simply went home. Mary Teresa had already left Grady years earlier and remarried another carny, Harry Glenn Newman, known as the Midget Man. The two had a son, also called Harry Glenn Newman. a large boy who grew to be over 6 feet tall, but whose IQ was rather low. He also joined the carnival circuit as the Human Hammer, driving nails up his nose without bleeding. After his wife left him, Grady also remarried and had a son named Grady Stiles III, who also had Ectrodactyly. But over time, both these marriages also ended in divorce. Things got even stranger when Mary Teresa decided to return to Grady, believing he had changed and that she still loved him. I guess distance makes the heart grow fonder. They remarried in 1989. Now all together again, they resumed the family business. But it's not long before Grady went back to his old ways of drinking and physical abuse. Only now it was much worse. He would regularly beat them in fits of rage, and even threatened to kill them all while holding a knife to Mary Teresa's throat. Living with him became unbearable. It's unclear whether it was Mary Teresa or her son Glenn who made the next move, but it would seem one of them approached their 17-year-old neighbor and fellow sideshow performer Chris Wyant and offered him $1,500 to kill Grady. Chris managed to purchase a gun through a friend, and late one evening in November 1992, he went to Grady Stiles' home while he was watching television, walked up behind him, and shot him 3 times into the back of his head at point-blank range, thus ending years of terror and abuse his family had endured at the hands of this hateful monster. At his funeral, a flowered wreath with the words, "From your loving wife," was placed on his casket. Unfortunately, things did not end well for the family. Though he was often disagreeable and drank to excess Seagram's 7 doubles with a splash of Coke, most carnies agreed with the prosecutors, who called the slaying a murder of convenience. After standing trial, an unsympathetic jury found Mary Teresa guilty of manslaughter and conspiracy to commit homicide. Despite her appeal, she received 12 years in prison. She stated, "My husband was going to kill my family. I believe that from the bottom of my heart." Chris Wyant, the young man who pulled the trigger, was convicted of second-degree murder and received a 27-year sentence for his part, but it was Harry Glenn Newman Jr., Grady's stepson, who paid the highest price. Ironically accused of being the mastermind behind the whole plot, he was convicted of first-degree murder as well as conspiracy to murder and was sentenced to life in prison. He met his end behind bars in 2014. Really a tragic story from start to finish for the whole family. The man once known as Lobster Boy may have died in 1992, but his legacy of evil and hate lives on even today. He has inspired comic book villains, album covers, and he even creeps into popular TV shows and music from time to time. The entertainment industry has greatly changed over the years, but the public's thirst for creeps and freaks is still very much alive. For more videos on the most amazing forgotten parts of our history, be sure to subscribe to the Intrigued Mind channel. Like the video and leave your suggestions in the comments below.